watching 2022 in retrospect, a highlight of so many key events that shaped 2022. We'll, of course, look ahead to 2023, hoping that we'll learn some lessons. We'll have a lineup of experts who will join us on the program today to take us through what transpired. They'll give us their impressions and make recommendations when necessary. Well, you can always go ahead and be a part of the program. You get to see some of how you will. But we'll start off on a security front today. And we do have General Abdurrahman Dambazao, who is a former Chief of Army Staff. He's also former Minister of Interior and President, Nigerian Society of Victimology. Good evening, General. Thank you for joining us on 2022 in retrospect today. Well, General, we do hope that you can hear me, but we're starting on security note today on the program. So could you just go ahead and give us your impression about how 2022, which will end in a couple of hours, turned out for you on a security note?
5th of June 2022. Christian faithful gathered at St. Francis Catholic Church in Owo Town, Ondo State, Southwest Nigeria, for their annual Youth Harvest event. The service was at its peak when an unexpected disruption turned the day into chaos and mourning for the worshippers. Eyewitness accounts say the building was rattled by an explosion before gunmen made their way into the church and began shooting with abandon.
The father was liberated. Then this Boko Haram come inside the church, blowing bomb, shooting aside. Then members of the church are running away. Some flow from some flow. They start shooting some people from leg. They get one woman from back, from face, all that shooting with the leg, shooting. So and now father now escaped, go inside the house. As that thing after them, the soldiers, before the soldiers come, they don't escape.
The attackers flee the scene, leaving their mark. Men, women, and children killed. Word of the attack spreads, and nearby churches promptly shut their doors.
I was in my church at Revelation Parish. Today is our service. What do we call it? Ikoriomode. That is a children harvest. So what really happened today? When we had a bath, all what happened, our church was down.
The Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu, who was attending to party matters in Abuja, promptly left for his state. His arrival at the scene of the attack a short while later sparked off another round of angry emotions, especially as this carnage happened in his hometown, and he has strong words for the perpetrators. A day that was designed for celebration has turned out to be quite the opposite. What many hope for is that this incident does not further increase the anxiety of Nigerians who are already struggling to cope with increasing cases of insecurity across the country.
Welcome back. You're still watching 2022 in retrospect here on Channels Television. And we will be going back to Abuja, where Chamberlain is, of course, and to our guest who will be joining us shortly. We had introduced him earlier, and that is the former Chief of Army Staff, also former Minister of Interior, and also President, Nigerian Society of Victimology, General Abdurrahman Dambazao. But let's begin on security here in Lagos. And joining me live in the studio is Mr. Fola Athawari. He is the former CEO, Lagos State Security Trust Fund. Good to have you. Compliments of the season.
Thank you very much.
How would you describe 2022 in terms of security?
Generally, you mean nationwide?
Yes.
Challenging, I would say it's challenging, and I'm sure those involved directly in managing it would say so. Challenging.
When you compare it to 2021?
You have major incidents like the train attack and so on. So I think it's been very dynamic. Efforts have been made, but I think, and this is just an opinion that some other people, I think that perhaps earlier there was a bit of hesitancy or slowness in confronting or addressing it. I recall that the Minister of Defense, current. I recall some months back he had said that the army had to change from a defensive stance to an offensive one. There were all kinds of reports about the reluctance of the police in some parts to proceed against a particular class of alleged criminals because of their perception of the political situation, all manner of things. But I think security has been like a hydra-headed monster. You cut it down here, it pops up there. I mean, just recently we had the mass killings in Benue and Kaduna, southern Kaduna. We had about a week ago 4 Kogi students of the Kogi Polytechnic kidnapped. It's an ongoing thing. Efforts are being made, but I think certain steps need to be taken urgently to put more men in the field because it's so widespread, the southeast. Recently we heard about the Ikom highway in Calabar. You know, it's like, you know, this, what do you call that, pop a mole, that game, you knock here, it pops up here. Yeah, but I think efforts are being made, but it's going to cost us a lot, and it's going to be quite a number of years before we can, you know.
But in terms of costs, we got one of the biggest, talking about defense and, you know,
they
security.
Are not, you mean the budget?
Yes.
You have to remember that most of the stuff we use is imported. And your currency has lost half its value. So you don't get excited by those figures. Those are, I mean, you're almost looking at the same numbers as last year's budget. But the actual value of the money is not the same. So, but the police have their trust fund, which we don't hear much about, but it should give them quite some support outside of the budget.
Are you worried that another sum we don't hear much about is the security votes?
I don't know what that is. There's no such thing. And let me say it here, at least I was in government, I was in cabinet. I don't know what people refer to when they say security vote. I don't know what it is. Is it some specific payment? And there's no such thing. If it's money drawn from the budget, then it's constrained by the size of the budget. I honestly hear people referring to it all the time. But when I was in Lagos State, right from PAMSEC through commissionership, there was never any reference to a security vote. Maybe some people have the perception that there's some fund somewhere, maybe at the center, from which payments are made every month to the governors, but I'm not aware of security. What I know is there's a budget, and there are heads in the budget which refer to security. And strictly speaking, security budgets are federal, because it's federal that controls all those agencies. The states just come in as contingency because of underfunding at the center. So that's my view. I may be wrong. Somebody might challenge me on that. But
well, do you also think that a bit of this unaccountability or lack of transparency in this affects
people keep talking about that. There is nowhere in the Constitution, and the Constitution is the main document, that says that any expenditure of government is free of oversight. No, it's a perception that we carried over from the military. The Public Accounts Committee of the House, be it the national or state, has the power to inquire into any. So any money spent outside of that is an unconstitutional expenditure. So there is no law that says that security funding shall be unaccountable. I remember the late NSA that died in the helicopter crash. I remember he was being interviewed on this channel some years back, and the same thing was put to him, and he said categorically that there is nothing like security vote. What you have is that each agency charged with security has a budget which has to go to the National Assembly for approval, and that same National Assembly has the power to oversight and question the expenditure. At best, they'll make it what do you call it, a closed hearing, just to protect you know, the details. But there's nothing like unaccountable expenditure in Nigeria. We shouldn't give people the excuse to do that.
I want to come to Lagos State, and this is with regards to your experience in terms of the year.
Yes.
in terms of security?
In Lagos?
Yes.
It's a perception thing, isn't it? I mean, I think what the aim of any security structure is to create a relative absence of fear. That's it. You can't get a perfect score, but if you encourage people to believe that there is a system in place, then they would go about their business with the relative absence of fear. So I think relatively, and compared to, say, the early 2000s and so on, I think Lagos is doing pretty well because they've got a structure. You know, the rapid response squad, it's funded both from the trust fund and the government and private sector. But I would say something that it's still an under-resourced in terms of manpower system. And as you know, it's the federal that deploys men. And I don't think Lagos has enough.
For its population.
That's why it had to set up the Neighborhood Watch and the other agency that it created, just to give some meat to that. One thing that disturbs me, and I will keep saying it in any forum, is the abuse of the VIP protection system, which has undermined the capacity of the police to properly police the space. You have thousands of armed police officers, many of them supposedly mobile police. And mobile police were supposed to be a strike force in the event of breakdown of law and order, but it has been depleted by the, and I think that the government should bring an end to this system, which has been gravely abused. I can understand protection for people like the president, the vice president, governors, the deputy, and heads maybe of other agencies whose incapacitation will affect the running of the state. That's everywhere in the world you have that. But here, it's everybody. It's businessmen, it's pastors, it's, it's ridiculous. Who pays for the guns? Public funds. Who pays for the training of these officers? The public.
And don't they pay to?
I'm not. It's not official. There's nowhere in any regulation that is official. Nobody knows what the situation is, how it's reviewed, etc. Policemen are not supposed to be guarding particular people, right? And their job is enforcement of law and protection of lives and property. We agree, like I said, by convention, political heads get a level of protection, and people who are involved in criminal cases, who are witnesses or informants and so on, and against whom threats have been made, are entitled for a while to police protection. But to give 5, 6 mobile policemen to a man for 24 hours of the day is an abuse of process. So that would increase the number of policemen available for patrols and other things.
But we'll come back to discussing this. Right now, we need to go on a break. You're still watching 2022 in Retrospect here on Channels Television. Welcome back to our special here on Channels Television. And of course, we are talking security sector. I've been discussing with my guest here in the studio, who is Mr. Arthur Worry. And also, Chamberlain, I believe you have something for us. James?
Well, I hope I have General Abdurrahman Dambazal this time. General, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Chamberlain. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. He can't hear me.
Okay. Okay.
I can hear you.
I was going to say, General, if you didn't hear me, then it will be on 2022, not on us, on a lighter note. But let's go ahead and get your perspectives on this matter. I mean, having seen the way 2022 almost ending now, the way we've gone about security, yes, the law did stipulate that the primary purpose of government is the safety of lives and the welfare of the citizenry. So from your perspective, having been there, how do you, in terms of our performance, how we've approached protecting, ensuring that every Nigerian feels safe. What do you think how it has fared in 2022?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me for this program, which is on the eve of the new year. And hopefully, we would pray that the new year 2023 will be better than the 2022. Of course, every year has its own challenges because life itself is dynamic. And in terms of security, I believe that the military has done very well, considering all factors. And specifically, when I refer to the Northeast, insurgency and terrorism, that group has been degraded and almost dismantled. And this being attested by the Global Terrorism Index 2022, which clearly put it there that when you compare to 2015, the number of deaths from terrorism in the Northeast reduced by 92%, from 2,125 to 178 deaths. So I think generally overall, the military has done very well there. Of course, that's not to say that we are seeing the end of it. Like I've always said that the insurgency in the Northeast is just not in the Northeast of Nigeria. It is a regional problem which also affects all the Lake Chad Basin Commission countries. That is Cameroon, Chad, Niger. And also it even extends to other countries in the Sahel. So it's a regional issue beyond Nigeria. And this is why Nigeria has been leading in the consolidating the operations of the Multinational Joint Task Force, which is based in Chad. And of course, when you look at 2022, also we have other security challenges in the Northwest, the banditry, the kidnapping, and so on and so forth. We also have challenges in the Southeast, the IPOB issue, which is threatening elections in the Southeast, which is the next major event that this country is going through in 2023. That's the elections. And of course, in the North Central, we have challenges of the hardest farmers conflict, and also some issues of banditry activities. So almost every geopolitical zone has something to contribute towards insecurity. But as I said, that it was a challenging year, and we do hope that 2023 will be better. When we talk of issue of security, we will not be limiting it to the physical aspect, but also there is the human aspect of security, which it is not the use of force that can solve it, but good governance. The issue of education, the issue of health care services, the issue of environment, the issue of poverty, the issue of employment or unemployment. So these are issues that require good governance, and they are fundamental issues when you talk of security. I'm not implying that, for instance, that poverty causes insecurity, but it's a factor. So if you are able to reduce poverty, you are able to reduce unemployment, you are able to raise the standard of education, the quality, and also accessibility of education, then you'll be able, by implication, be able to reduce these insecurity challenges.
Well, General, you know, you've touched on a number of issues, and just as you also said, there are several factors to security or otherwise. But when you say the military has done very well, I didn't hear you mention the police, so probably you were going to come to it, because there are several people in the country who see things differently. For instance, the police are the people who relate on a first-line basis in terms of security agencies with the populace. So from that perspective as well, I mean, you've been Minister of Interior. You also have seen some of the challenges, the jailbreaks, those who are killed almost on a monthly basis this year, and how it appeared as though we had a challenge stemming the tide, despite several directives from the president, but we still saw those things happening. So from that perspective, does the government look at it as a complex whole to ensure that overall all security agencies are able to work together and ensure that Nigerians also see that they have done a lot to guarantee our safety?
Yes, you're quite right. I mentioned the military, with emphasis, because in this country, as of today, everybody's eyes is on the military. The military has been performing various tasks, and I agree that when it comes to law and order, the Nigerian police has the primary responsibility. But we are talking of a situation now whereby we have groups who are armed with military-grade weapons, attacking communities, attacking individuals on the highway, which to a large extent is beyond what the police can handle itself. But I quite agree that in order to even get it right, we must step backward to ensure that we have the kind of police this country requires in terms of their training, in terms of their discipline, in terms of their equipment. Quite a lot of activities of the police is being handled by the military. This tells you that there is a problem in terms of the capacity of the police to handle it. But the Constitution is very, very clear that the police, the primary responsibility of law and order is in the police and other law enforcement agencies. And I agree with you that tackling insecurity in the country, and that is why I mentioned these other issues of human security. Tackling insecurity in the country requires a kind of whole of government approach, whereby every ministry, department, and agency of government is involved in this issue. So it's not a one-man's business. Likewise, on the other hand, it requires the whole of society to come together to be able to tackle insecurity. So it's not just issue of government, it's not just issue of security agencies, it also has some civilian components in it. The civil society organizations, the media, professionals, they all come together to deal with it. Individuals, communities have to be part of it. So I agree with you in its totality. You cannot leave this issue to the military, and this is what I'm saying. So there is need for us to ensure that every sector understands this.
Now, at the moment, I mean, we saw this previous years, the last 3, 4, 5 years, but in 2022, it was also a feature to the extent that state governors kept on talking about reorganizing the structure of policing in this country. Now, almost in every state, there is one form of security outfit or the other. That speaks to the fact that there's a gap, there's something going on about policing that we need to address. Yet, we won't speak about the elephant in the room, policing, multi-leveled policing, to guarantee that kind of security that every citizenry can indeed say, well, yes, I not only am safe, I can feel it, I can see it because it's closer to me. What is your impression about this narrative about us reorganizing the structure of our policing in the country?
Let me tell you, Chamberlain, I'm for it. Anything that will ensure efficiency and effectiveness of policing is a welcome idea. So it's important that we look at the policing for like I mentioned, that the policing has been militarized because you see the policeman carrying a military-grade weapon, AK-47. So there is need to look at policing in a way that it will ensure confidence and trust between the public and the police. And it requires a lot in terms of their training, in terms of re-equipping them, in terms of their discipline, in terms of leadership. So these are things that we have to do. Whether you are talking of going for community policing, whether you are talking of going for state policing, whether you are talking of having layers of policing, what is important is that they must be effective and efficient in maintaining law and order in the society. And that this is what the ordinary citizen want. The citizen want freedom from fear. So it's very, very important. You go out, you don't think that somebody will attack you. You are in your home, you know that you are at peace. That's what the citizen want. So if the structure of the police, the fear has been that once you have that kind of arrangement, the politicians, particularly the governors, are going to misuse it. Yeah, even if there's that fear, there should be some checks within the law that will prevent that. But overall, this is the important thing is that the question is the system, is the structure we have today has the capacity to deal with the issues of law and order? If the answer is yes, then we continue with it. If the answer is no, then we look at it again and provide alternative structure and test it to see how far we can go with that. So it's very important that we look at it very well. Yeah.
Well, General, just one more thing before we let you go. Section 4 of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022 gives some responsibility to the NSA, such that he is expected to formulate policies for the effective implementation and concerted counter-terrorism and terrorism financing efforts, among several other directives or at least responsibilities for the office of the NSA. Now, we spoke to several persons in different security agencies in the country. They feel alienated from some of the strategy being carried out by the government. In fact, some of them did say that they would like to see, in fact, both serving and retired security personnel, I should add that one. Now, some of them said that they want to see that there is a need, actually, for a National Intelligence Coordination Center with all security agencies represented, and where they want all information analyzed into intelligence and then subsequently shared on the need-to-know basis as well as the need-to-share basis, so that they will be seen to be working together. They think that this is what is missing from our current security architecture.
Yes, I agree with that perception. There's a gap in terms of the way the intelligence community works. Otherwise, some of the things that happen wouldn't even happen. The important thing is that that is one aspect. If you have the capacity to monitor, and you don't even have the capacity to respond, then your capacity to monitor becomes useless. If the capacity to monitor is one-sided and is not involving other persons or stakeholders that are supposed to know and act, then that also becomes useless. So it's very important that there is adequate coordination, cooperation, and collaboration. Coordination, cooperation, and collaboration among the security agencies, all stakeholders who are supposed to know and act. And I want to be sure that, I want to say that I think we should have more frequent sittings of National Security Council, because if we have more frequent sittings of National Security Council, that is where some of these issues can be deliberated and decision taken. And so it's very important that all the stakeholders in the intelligence community come together and work together, because when you leave gaps, then there's bound to be loopholes for failure. And I suspect that was what happened with the attacks, the train attack along Abuja-Kaduna rail line, and also the Kuje prisons. Because these criminals, these violent criminals, were able to spend some hours during those incidents without response. So if we are able to improve, work together, share intelligence, and be able to respond as a community, then we'll be able to checkmate that kind of incidents from happening. So I totally agree with those who raise those concerns. And by the way, the office of the NSA is mainly to coordinate these activities. So if there is any observation that coordination is not well done, then I think this is something that should be taken seriously.
All right. So quite a lot to dissect there, General. But we do thank you for your time here today, General Abdulrahman Dambazo, former Chief of Army Staff. And we wish you a very happy 2023, General.
And you too. I wish you well.
Mr. Athawari.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Athawari, I've heard a lot of people say time and again that we do not lack laws in this country, that we have a lot of those laws, but there's always something missing. So, well, in terms of whatever it is that is missing, but do you think that those laws, first, perhaps, I don't know if you think it's adequate, or is it just limited to implementation of those laws? Because there are several people who feel, to a large extent, they haven't seen justice not just being done or seen to have been done. They want to see a lot more with upholding the rule of law. And if that were, at least if it permeates our society, several people may just fall in line and then we may not have this kind of scenario we have in different parts of the country, or people taking laws into their hands?
Yeah, look, weak law enforcement is a petri dish from which terrorism and other crimes grow. Just take a drive along Lagos roads or roads in any part of the country and you see multiple breaches of the law. Let's take the traffic law. Why do developed countries concentrate so much on traffic? Because it is a crucial element of order. And when you have order, it is easier to, if you like, control crime. Our institutions are weak. The police has been so politicized that they don't seem to know what their function is anymore. Like I said, they've been captured by VIPs and politicians. They're not concentrating on enforcing the law. And I'm happy that one of the candidates for the presidential election has said specifically in his manifesto that is going to redeploy policemen attached to VIPs, and that was Asiwaju Tinubu. So, number one, the police have to re-engineer their approach to their role. What is the police role? Now, the police are expeditionary. That's what they do. They go on expeditions. They tell us after the fact. Their main role is to prevent crime. That's the first line in the constitution of police role. Prevention of crime. And then after that, protection of lives and property. But these days, what you hear is stories about the police that, oh, after XYZ were kidnapped, the police plus hunters, plus vigilantes, and so on, combed the bush and arrested 2 people or 3 people or 4 people. You never hear about the trials. You never hear about conviction. So it doesn't have the impact that it's supposed to have, which is to, part of what you call stopping people or making people think twice before going. But my main concern is that we are not enforcing the day-to-day laws of the country. There is public disorder. There is traffic disorder. There is general. So if you were to enter some spaces, you won't know whether there's a criminal act going on or not, because people drive against traffic, or they drive, on the 4th lane, which doesn't exist, and so on. So I think that the police should refocus on ensuring public order, so that people can go about, and then you can now start to escalate when the crimes are more serious. And I agree with the general that we need a new structure for the police. Let state police come into being so that governors can be held politically liable if there's crime in their neighborhoods.
I've just been told that we're now being joined by Major General Chris Musa. He's the Theatre Commander, Joint Task Force Northeast Operation Hadinkai. He's joining us from our Borno studio. Thank you and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Major General, if you could just talk to us about some of the high points of your operations for Nigeria this year.
Please, can you say that again? I seem to be having some problem with reception.
The major high points in terms of security for the Operation Hadinkai in 2022.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here again. Operation Hadinkai operations are on course. We have achieved so much this 2022. And we're sure that by 2023 it will be better. The Northeast is very, very peaceful. It's not yet over, but we're sure we're on top of the issues on ground.
And Major General, from what we hear, we understand that there was a lot of an increase in security operations this year, especially, the armed forces in the Northeast. We also understand that perhaps you might call some of the successes is that, about 82,000 terrorists and their families also surrendered this year. And of course, some of the abducted schoolgirls, were returned back home to their families. Some roads that were closed were also reopened, and these are some of the successes that we understand were recorded. But in terms of addressing some of these security issues, do you think that if Nigeria addresses security in the northernmost part of the country, it would address security in Nigeria by a good number, 70 or 80%?
Yeah, for us here in the Northeast, I can speak for the Northeast, I think we are over 80%. And it is because we actually have understood what made the insurgents tick. We've been able to address those issues. Firstly, asymmetric warfare is people-centric. So we have made it such a point that everybody in the Northeast understands the situation, the challenges, and that everybody has a part to play in it, in the success. And we are receiving the best of cooperation from the locals, from the citizens, and that has actually made our job a lot easier. We work in close synergy with all security agencies, with the state government, with the locals, like I mentioned earlier, and all the stakeholders in the Northeast understand what is going on, and they're giving us all the support that we require.
In terms of manpower, has that been sufficient? Manpower and also some of the tools, the weapons that you use in your operations? Yeah,
the challenges of manpower will always be there. But we have a way around it. We have some equipment that came in. The Chief of Defense Staff and the service chiefs have done everything possible to ensure that we get the basic things that we need. And that has actually given us the advantage over the insurgents. And besides that, we work closely with the civil police, with the civil defense, and all other security agencies. So we have the number. We use that to build up our numbers. And again, we have the civilian JTF, who are the locals, and they have volunteered to take part. They have sacrificed so much too, and because they know the terrain quite very well. So we work in close proximity with them, and that has given us advantage. We don't have all we require, but what we have on ground has enabled us to achieve what we are doing. And especially the synergy between the services. I think that is fantastic. Just a few days ago, the Chief of Army Staff and the Chief of Air Staff came around for Christmas luncheon with the troops, where they came and just to boost the morale of the troops. I think that's something that we're doing. The Chief of Defense Staff is equally doing the same thing, the Chief of Naval Staff. And so this synergy, close cooperation between all the services has actually made this a lot easier. And that's why you see we're achieving the success we're getting.
And we do want to thank the armed forces, because it's definitely not easy. We lost a number this year as well. But some say that, from what's happening, the onslaught in the Northeast, the air bombardment and all of that is taking them to the Northwest. What's your thought, Mr. Othawori?
Honestly, it's not an area that I have much expertise on. My focus is more on civil policing. But I think they know their strategy, and I think... like I said, and as one of the speakers said, there's still a long way to go. We're still going to expend a lot of resources, and because, as I said, we seemed to have allowed it to grow to the extent that it's become so difficult to manage. But the military, they're professionals. I'm sure they have a grand strategy that will eventually, make it very difficult for these kind of things to happen.
Looking at perhaps what General Dambazao talked about, he said bad governance. He seemed to suggest that bad governance was very key. The unemployment, the poverty. And, in the North, for example, there's a larger number of out-of-school children. So, how do we sort of solve that in terms of governance now?
That's a generational issue to solve. And you can't wait for that. In fact, you need conditions of peace if you are going to get children back into school, and improve governance. Your resources that you're expending on the insurgency itself makes it more difficult to deliver on some of the government essentials. But yes, I think, you know, theoretically people say, oh, poverty is as a result of poor governance, that if you deal with the poverty or you deal with the unemployment, you'll deal with the crime. But let me tell you, a lot of criminals, it's not because of poverty. They just have, you know, criminal intent, as it were. I mean, Spain, for instance, after the financial crisis, had 42% unemployment. But crime didn't go up suddenly because the institutions maintained their strength and so on. So I think for me, the starting point, the primary thing is to strengthen the institutions that are responsible for law and order and security. After that, we can then begin to engage on these issues. Because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't have all these issues, and governance wasn't perfect. So, you know.
Major General Chris Musa, just to quickly ask you a few questions, and this is before we let you go. One question is that in terms of, some people say for peace to reign, let's dialogue, let's talk. Do you think that terrorists should be spoken to, that there should be dialogue when it comes to terrorists or handling terrorism in the country? Most definitely. You find that what we're facing now is the kind of insurgency that has run through for 13 years. For us to be able to get this completely wrapped up, we need to be able to have the non-kinetic aspects, and this non-kinetic aspect has to do with good governance, reaching out to the commanders of these groups, including searching and looking out where are the sponsors. You can imagine that they'll be able to sustain this for 13 years. Where are they getting the funding from? Who is sustaining them? Who are their supporters? We know they have a lot of linkages from external forces and from within. So we should be able to do that. And then once we do that, as we're doing, and that's why you see as they're surrendering, we need to get the leaders. And then the leaders will see and understand that it is wise for them to hand up, to surrender. It is better for them to surrender and come out because they cannot sustain it. They have seen within themselves that they cannot take out the Federal Republic of Nigeria. They cannot face the armed forces. So it's good that we open other windows. As we're doing this, there will be dialogue behind the doors so that they give them a leeway for them to see, okay, we can exit, and then so that there will be peace because they know it's just a matter of time. Another thing is that ransom is also being paid. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Major General, ransom is also being paid by those who are being kidnapped, by families. I mean, this is also happening. Sorry, the information is distorted. I can't really hear you quite well. So, Major General, I was saying that ransom is also being paid. I mean, you've given your point of view about the kinetic and non-kinetic, and you're wondering, you know, where the source of funding is coming from. But we know that those who have been kidnapped and those, you know, these families have been paying ransom. And in some cases, the government has also paid ransom, you know, to these terrorists as well. Major General, can you still hear me? Yeah, I can't hear you quite well, but I heard you mention about the issue of the funding and it being sustained. I think we need to really find out where the funding, who are these sponsors? There's a lot of people that are still sponsoring them, both from externally and internally. We have worked adequately with the Joint Task Force because before now, whenever we conduct operations, they fizzle out into other countries, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger, and then come back. Now we have the Joint Task Force, multinational Joint Task Force. We have been working in synergy together with them. And then we have the Operation Emergence 4 of the Cameroonian Army and their Brigade Rapid Response of Cameroon. So we have the border areas too are also being manned. The challenge we're having now again is the Lake Chad area. We still have some openings there. Unfortunately, I can't hear you very well, but I think we're on course and we'll continue to do what we're supposed to do. Like we said,
for us to address, just addressing some of the questions you asked the guests in the House, I think one mistake we make in the country is that we think security is only the business of the security forces. No, it is everybody's responsibility. And how do we start that? Let us start from home. What we're seeing, like the guest just mentioned, 20 years ago we didn't have this. Then we had good parenting system. We had good schools. When these things collapsed, we ended up into insurgency. So we need to go back to be able to build up capacities from behind. Our schools must be in place. We must have good governance. We must be able to curtail and understand who are Nigerians. And how do we do that? We must have a database, build up these capacities. If we're able to put this in place, and then in primary schools, secondary schools, we do lectures, training. There should be subjects on security, security awareness. Most times you find that in villages, you see some people gathering a number of people, training them with arms and all this, and nobody talks until it gets bad. Boko Haram, when it started, if we have nipped it in the bud, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are today. So we must be proactive, and every Nigerian must take ownership of what is going on. It's not a Nigerian army issue or the Nigerian military or the Nigerian security agencies. It is everybody's responsibility. And it is better when we stop throwing blames at each other. We should look at it as a Nigerian project. For Nigeria to survive, we all have to put our hands together.
Very true. Major General Musa, final question, and this is a question I think you didn't hear at the time, and this is the question of ransom. What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I'm having a problem with the earpiece.
Paying ransom, you know, to terrorists. The question of ransom.
Oh, issue of ransom. No, we don't have issues on ransom here. We I totally do not partake in anything on ransom, and we discourage that totally. And even the terrorists know we do not compromise on that. Issues of ransom, we don't go there.
Indeed.
We are giving them a window to surrender. Any of them who surrenders, we take him in, and the state government administers them, and will provide the security. The DDRR program is being planned both from the federal government and the state. I think that will take place very soon. The state government is doing the best they can for now to ensure that they handle the incident. Now we have over 83,000. Out of this number, 42,000 are children, 20-something thousand are women, and the rest are part of the men, where we have the terrorists and the other ones. So you see, they were building up a new generation of children, and that will have been most dangerous for the country, because if a child grows up believing that killing is natural, it becomes very dangerous. And so we're happy that they're out. We have encouraged those ones that are in, and we're receiving calls from them. They really want to handle. I think they are tired. They've understood. Those of them that have surrendered have told us in clear terms that they were deceived. They were told it was jihad, it was this, it was that, only to realize that their leaders were making brisk business. They were making money, and there were some people that were also using them for their own benefits. And a lot of them are out, and they're out for good, and they are never looking forward to going back. So we're appealing to all the other ones that are still there. They have the chance, they have the window to surrender. If they don't, and we get them, whatever comes out of that is their own calling.
Parting shot to you, Mr. Arthur Warre, in terms of, you know, what to look forward to in 2023.
Well, I think efforts are being made, but let me say, in response to the proposition that security is everybody's business, I say that that may be true, but it's the primary business of government, because most people do not have the capacity to respond to the level of violence and insecurity. Yes, they can give information, but people look to the government as the primary instrument. We've surrendered all our powers of violence to government to protect us. So government will make more efforts. Like I said, I don't see the situation dissipating in a long time, because it's gone so deep. And like you rightly said, I think it was reported that over R1 billion has been paid in ransoms for kidnaps across the country over the past 2-3 years, which in itself will be recycled into more violence. But I think that there's a determination on the part of government to, you know, ensure that normalcy is restored so that we can now talk about the good governance, investments, and so on that will address some of the problems that have arisen.
All right, we'll wrap that up. Lots of optimism from you.
Yes, you have to be optimistic. I am
Thank
optimistic.
you, Mr. Fola Athawari,
Yes.
former CEO, Lagos State Security Trust Fund. Thank you for joining
pleasure.
us.
Thank you.
And we'd like to thank you, Major General Chris Musa, Theatre Commander, Joint Task Force Northeast Operation Hadinkai. Thank you so much, and thanks also for your service to the nation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year.